There are so many games I want to cover that it's really hard to know where to start, but I think it's only right that we start with Strider. Now, Strider was released in 1989 by Capcom, and it was loosely based on a Japanese manga called Strider Hairyu. Later it was ported to several home systems, and the Mega Drive version is generally considered to be the best. Now, in my last video I explained how I came to own Strider, but in this video we're going to take a look at the game itself.
So the game opens up with Hairyu gliding into the Russian city of Kazafu, and you know, even this first stage showcases everything that makes this game so superb. Hairyu himself is just so fast and athletic, and the controls are really responsive. It truly is just a pleasure to play. This game does not take itself seriously at all, and it's the better for it. For example, it isn't long before you come across the muscle man Strobaya, who is obviously based on Ivan Drago from Rocky IV. Now of course this makes no sense whatsoever, but any game in which you play as what is essentially a ninja, fighting Ivan Drago with a plasma sword in the year 2048 has to be one of the greatest games of all time. The music in this game is some of the best ever heard on a Mega Drive, but not only does each stage have its own piece of music, but each section in each stage has its own piece of music, and they fit together sublimely. Hairyu can find the usual assortment of power-ups such as health and health extenders in the form of the Japanese characters for Hai and Ryu respectively, invincibility, extra lives, but he can also gain robot companions. The most common of these are the dipodal saucers, who will move around Hairyu and destroy any enemies they encounter. He can also acquire a pteropodal Robopanther, but very rarely. They seem far easier to acquire on the lower difficulty levels. He can also find an item which extends the length of his plasma sword Falchion. There are 5 stages in this game, and after defeating the Ouroboros in Kazafu, it's off to Siberia, where you'll have the first of 2 encounters with the iconic Mechapon, the mechanical gorilla.
You know, I love this. I just absolutely love this.
Look how slick and elegant this is. Hairyu's ability to climb always separated Strider from other 2D platformers. You know, I actually think it was Strider that instilled in me the love for climbing. I think that this game made climbing cool to the eyes of a 7-year-old. After emerging onto the peak and defeating the cyborg solo, you have to run down a mountainside littered with mines, and this is one of my favourite scenes in this game. It's so rare for a 2D platformer to give you such a sense of grandeur and openness.
Why is it that in every game, no matter how good, there's always something where you play it and you think to yourself, why on earth is this in the game? You know, it could be a boss, it could be a difficult section, it could be a certain power-up, it could be anything, but there's always something. It doesn't matter what game it is. Well, this is Strider's something.
Basically, you have to jump from shuttle to shuttle until you reach the giant cruiser, and doing that is easy enough, but it's not so easy when you've got bombs raining down on you. Now my complaint about this section is that sometimes it's simply impossible to avoid taking a hit. There is so little space to move on, and on the hardest difficulty the bombs take a few hits to destroy. The wind can also change randomly, so it isn't always possible to simply anticipate in which direction a bomb will fall. Oh, that was close. Oh, Jesus! On the easy difficulty there are no bombs here, and you may well think, well, put the game on hard and what do you expect? But my point is that sometimes this section isn't just hard, sometimes it isn't possible. The only time you should ever take damage in a game is if you fail to avoid taking that damage. But here, sometimes there is just literally nothing you can do. When you finally reach the cruiser, you climb on board and have to fight 3 martial artists who constitute the boss of this stage, and then finally take command of the ship by facing the pilot, who'd rather fall to his death than fight you. I love it how you can effectively commit suicide yourself by jumping through the window and still finish the stage successfully. The next stage takes place in the flying fortress Balog. This is where, after destroying the Eliminator cannon, you can find the well-known hidden panda. As far as I can tell, finding the panda just gives you points, but it's funny to see. There's a system of conveyor belts that you can negotiate, but I prefer to just take a shortcut under the bottom of the battleship, once again employing Hairyu's awesome climbing skills. Even classic games like Golden Axe are guilty of getting repetitive due to the nature of their gameplay, but Strider doesn't suffer from this problem because of its excellent and varied level design, which manages to keep things interesting throughout. On the flying fortress Belog alone, you go from an anti-gravity chamber to another iconic scene where you must destroy the anti-gravity unit which keeps Belog in the air. Of course, after destroying it, you have to make your escape as the ship explodes around you. And this is another one of those bits that is just plain unfair sometimes. A Captain Hook lookalike called Captain Beard Jr. is trying to escape on a shuttle but preventing his men from getting on board by knocking them off the ship, and sometimes they take you with them. Considering you have fiery death chasing you, it's not like you can just hang about for the right moment to get into position and pull yourself up. But when you do make it, you kill Captain Beard and steal his means of escape. From a flying battleship to the Amazon rainforest where you'll have to face the legendary women warriors known as the Amazons. I wonder if Capcom are aware that the Amazons are actually from Greek mythology and have nothing to do with the Amazon rainforest. Whatever the case, there couldn't be more of a contrast between the locations where Hiryu finds himself in this game, and yet brilliantly, he never seems out of place whether he's in Siberia, on a battleship, or in the Amazon. Not even when he's walking with dinosaurs and jumping on their backs. But that's the beauty of these kind of games. The developers didn't feel the need to make things as realistic as possible, and so use of their imaginations was restricted only by the available technology. Yet despite the focus being firmly on gameplay and fun, you do find yourself being immersed and taking things seriously just as much as you would with any gritty modern day shiny graphics fest. The boss of this stage is a machine called the Lago Robot, and as long as you stay up high, he isn't too much of a problem, and once he's destroyed, it's on to the final stage, the third moon itself. As you'd expect, this is the stage where things get difficult. You've got stomping robots, flying robots, stabbing robots and missiles flying all over the place. You've got to move fast and don't miss a jump if you want to get through this hell. This final stage also contains one of my favourite sections in any game ever, where you have to work your way across a space upside down while drills come out the walls, seamen fire missiles at you and robots and drones try to shoot you. This piece of music is also my favourite piece from Strider. If you've been playing this game on easy, you might be used to working your way along the floor, but on hard difficulty, just forget it. The drones will send you tumbling into outer space and there's nothing you can do. And yes, I am well aware that there is a secret room here, but just because it's secret doesn't mean it's of any use, and this one definitely isn't. Going along the roof is your only hope, but that's not exactly easy either. In grand old school tradition, you'll have to face all the boss characters again in this final stage, with the Ouroboros carrying you to the place of your final showdown with Grandmaster Mio himself. He can be quite tricky to beat if you've never fought him before. He floats around and summons lightning and wolves and piranhas to kill you, but with some determined sword swinging, Hiryu will prevail and be raised on high in his victory. The ending of the game has Hiryu watching the third moon be destroyed before taking off on his glider through a cast list, which sees all his enemies appear for one last time. Finally, he flies back to the Earth and on to further adventures.
There are many games that I consider to be classics that are just generally ignored, but Strider is not one of them. Now, is it a perfect game? No. For example, during the course of this review you may have noticed that whenever Hiryu enters a new section of the game there's a brief pause, and whenever the screen gets busy, it can slow down. But those minor things hardly detract from the fact that this is a true classic. It's one of my all-time personal favourite games, and if you haven't played it, you're missing out. Now, lots of people are aware that Capcom released a sequel to Strider in the year 2000 called Strider 2 in the arcades and on the PlayStation. But not so many people are aware that there was actually a sequel to Strider before that called Strider Returns, or simply Strider 2 in Europe, and it was actually developed by a completely different company. So, is it any good? Well, let's find out.